Leather versus Law by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. An instance of calculating foresight and prudence is illustrated in the following verses. If men would rely on the mutual study of a spirit of equity, and enter more confidentially into the claims of each, what beautiful pictures of repentant resignation to a just castigation would be afforded, by certain of those who misunderstand the rights of property! An excellent lesson of this kind is taught by the experience of the first tramp. He parted from the farmer with comprehensive impressions of the farmer's energy and application to business, a fact which he took the earliest opportunity of advertising in the nearest hospital. Through the second case also runs a beautiful lesson. To the farmer it may not have happened so well as to the tramp, but the record serves to show that an action at law should only result, as a mutual alternative, agreeable to both parties; therefore the air of the law courts would be considerably purified of the stuffiness that oppresses the impetuous litigant. Said one tramp to the second tramp, "The dark is coming on the sun. Do you prowl in to this 'ere barn, and I'll dodge on to yonder one. I allus like to sleep alone, besides you see it runs 'em tight." The varmers, when a pair o' tramps turns up, so Bill, I'll say good night. The Chanticleer did early trump a tonic note upon his pipe, and woke the husbandman to view how thick and tall his crops and ripe, and in his barn he found a tramp. "Ho, trespasser, what shall I do?" he cried. "Shall I evict by law, or take the law myself on you?" Well, varmer, I have had with cranks of legal jaw too much," said he, "so with your leave I'd rather you would take the law yourself on me." "Ha! that's exactly to my form." He gripped him by the neck. "Here goes! Whew! Now take this, and that, and this." With that he gave him all his toes. He kicked him through the barn door, he rolled him in the grunty sty, and up and down and round the yard, and then he bunged him in the eye. He ducked him in the horse's pond, he slung him right across a load of dung, he kicked him through the gate, and wiped him up and down the road. He kicked him black, he kicked him blue, he kicked him green, and red and white, he kicked him till he could not kick, for then the tramp was out of sight. That tramp did never more appear. Around that neighborhood he passed, away just like a whiff of smoke, that scuds before the autumn blast. A second husbandman that morn, was quick astir, he fancied he did hear a wailing in his barn, a moan, as of the wild banshee. He thought to catch the female sprite, for truth he was a festive scamp, he got a sort of snub when he discovered but a snoring tramp. The sleep was deep, for with his foot he had to supplement the blow, or box he gave him on his ear, and shouted in that ear, "Hallo! You'll pardon me, my friend, but ere I thought this barn belonged to me. Now shall I cluck you out myself, or seek injunct from Chancerie?" The startled tramp did rub his nose, and stared that farmer in the eye, then stretched himself, and spoke as he would fain enjoy a longer lie. Well, boss, I've been so often chucked, that it would be relief to stay, and in the court of chancery, arrange it in a friendly way. They took the case to chancery, and argued it from every point, but in the end they always found, the arguments were out of joint. The prosecuting counsel cranked, the cogs of all the tramp's defence, and also in his turn was spanked, and thus they cribbed the farmer's pence. They argued it on every side, with judge's whim and lawyer's yarn, but still the tramp remains at home, his home is in the farmer's barn. The case has not been ended yet, it crops up now and often then, you cannot tell when it may crop, it might crop up next week again. But when the tramp will have to go, I cannot tell it, nor can he, the farmer cannot, nor can they, the lawyers of the chancery. Thus though we may not take the law into our hands, it's often met to serve extemporaneous writ by sharp eviction from the feet. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Heads and Tails by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by recording person. Heads and Tails. 'Twas in the Daisy Bell, I met him quite a swell. His style was very taking and off-hand. No thanks, said he, I think we'll toss up for the drink. I'm independent as there's in the land. I tossed him and I lost. Said he, that was a frost. I'll toss you now a consolation toss. I'll toss you for a bob. I lost, I wouldn't rob. Said he, I wouldn't see you at a loss. By gum, here's what we'll do. I'll toss you now for two. It's double now or quits that we will try. Again I lost, 'twas queer. Again says he, look here, your fortune will be lifting by and by. I thought that it must turn, but soon I had to learn. His way was rather taking and off-hand. A goodly sum was due. Said he, I've made off you 6 quid and 16 tanners, you will stand. Your double coin, said I, has just now caught my eye, and the dust from your jacket I must whack. His jacket with malacca I did crack. His hide was very taking at the back. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Colonel and the Cook by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Colonel, I could love you with faithful heart, said she, but you are far too noble, too grand a man for me, for you're commander of the horse, and hardly could be higher, while I am only just a cook, around the kitchen fire. Said she, I could not marry you, for you are all so grand, I'd be a most unhappy wife, the saddest in the land. Said he, I did not ask you, but when I'm far from you, and on the field of battle, I'll see what I can do. Said he, I never thought of it, and only now I see, perhaps you are the woman, would suit to wed with me, and that is just the cause of them, the words I said to you, when on the field of battle, I'll see what I can do. The town was all in tumult, of women's wail alack, for many a gallant soldier, would never more come back, and even he the colonel, might fall the first or last, and that's the chiefest reason, that cook was weeping fast, and though it was not proper, to see the colonel look, with visage of dejection, upon a humble cook, yet nature won't be cheated, deep of high degree, adieu, I'll come back worthy, my love to wed for thee. And that is how they parted, and those the words he said, And oft when she was cooking, it came into her head, the promise he had uttered, of sweetest memory, "Adieu, I'll come back worthy, my love, to wed with thee." She took a thought one morning, and bought a copy book, said she, "I'll study pot hooks, they're suited for a cook, I'll write his name in roundhand, a letter I will send, with the words 'No more at present,' my pet name at the end." She wrote his name in roundhand, a letter she did send, with "No more at present," her pet name at the end. But it never reached him, and he did languish yet, For the cook, at home in Erin, he never could forget. But lo! a taste for learning is like a taste for drink. While working on the pot hooks, she then began to think, And thought is like a snowball, that gathers every turn. She studied read 'em easies, while joints began to burn. She studied night and morning, at languages and paint, At poetry and musty prose, and legends old and quaint. She wrote a 3-volume novel, and got a fancy price, Became a photo beauty, on this, quoth she, is nice. She then appeared in drama, while posing there with grace, Of gauze and limelight glowing, upon her lovely face. A common soldier shouted, from the Olympian rail, "O 'eavens, it's my 'Arriet!" and turning deadly pale, He darted for the stage door, her carriage grand was there, She was about to enter, with all the fuss and flare, Of mashers buzzing round her, and plunging forth, said he, "I wot was once a Colonel, who went across the sea, Of course you must remember, the words I said to you, When on the fields of battle, I'll see what I could do, I never make a promise, but to my word I stick, The man who breaks his promise, is but a broken brick, For I was once a Colonel, and for your love I strove, To be reduced into the ranks, for sake of you, my love, I ran away in battle, I several times got drunk, Was challenged to a duel, and purposely took funk, They whittled my commission, into a major's rank, And still I acted badly, and several times I drank, I managed to get nibbled, down to a sergeant then, I stole a pint of whiskey, was put amongst the men, I've been all over Europe, a looking out for you, I have eschewed my grammar, to prove my art was true, I've parted with my surname, that all might well combine, Which now I'm Private Miggins, of the 77th line, I've got a vulgar accent, and vulgar sayings too, I drink from common pewter, it's all along of you. And generally my manners, are much about the styles, You'll find among the manners, of the people of St. Giles. But here I say, look, listen, you have not acted straight, But made us yet the victims, of a lopsided fate, While I've been levellin' downwards, to suit wid your degree, You've been and gone and levelled up, contrariwise to me, You had not ought to take me, so short as this I say, You've worked a mean advantage, while I was far away, But still we'll go to morrow, and make our love complete, Get out!" she cried, and vanished, in her brougham down the street. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Spirit That Held Him Down by William Theodore Parks, LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, B.C. He was one of the middle-aged men, I wot, a troubadour bed-light, who lost himself in a lonely wood, an exceptional sort of night, for the moon was only beginning to wax, and the clouds were muggy and black, and there wasn't much chance of finding his way to the trail of the beaten track. But troubadours were stout and strong, of tough and stubborn stuff, and took the rough with the sleek and the smooth with the rusty rough. So up thro' the drift of the hummocky ruck of the clouds he searched for a star, to serenade with the thingummy thrang of the thrum of his new guitar. The glint of one thro' a galloping cloud he caught, and he screwed his wire, and gave a twist to its patent head, and toned the catgut higher, then flung the cape of his cloak aside, and in an æsthetic strain, he pitched his voice to the concert key, and twanged on the strings amain. But having expressed himself in song, with a quivering verse or two, his favorite string gave out with a bang, and stopped his impromptu. He muttered a satire upon that string, and sat on a bank close by, when he heard the trip of a female foot, and lisp of a female sigh. She was one of the guardians of the piece of ground that was round him there, an aerial spirit in azure blue, and fluffs of auburn hair, that framed a very attractive face, of cream and strawberry pink, and greeted the troubadour bed-light with a captivating wink. "O troubadour, what brings you here, so lone and sad?" said she. "Just throw your guitar across your back, and wander away with me. I'll show you the fairy dells of mine, all tricked around with sheen, of glittering gold and sparkling gems, with electric lights between. I'm a single woman, and never was once in love with a man till this." And then she stooped to his quivering lip, imprinting a dainty kiss. "Why don't you get up out of that?" she cried, and make no longer stay, but a spirit within still held him down, in a magical sort of way. "O troubadour, you're a suitable man, to live in the woods with me, we'll dance to the charms of elfin song, down under the greenwood tree." And she coaxed him again with a dainty kiss, "O sweetheart, come be gay," but a spirit within still held him down, in a magical sort of way. "I hope that you don't imagine," said she, "that I'm a frivolous flirt, I'm the woman that's new, the fashion to day, with rational trunks for skirt. I can ride on a bicycle made for two, or tee out the sins of town." But all he could do was give her a grin from the spirit that held him down. He'd have given the world to get up out of that, but a tantalizing sprite had taken possession of him, you see, in the early part of the night. The fact of it is that he couldn't get up, if she gave him a kingly crown. And all he could do was give her a grin from the spirit that held him down. 'Twas woe to see an attractive maid so slurred by a knightly bard, a misery this, for her plaint of love, to be grinned at, snubbed, and marred. Yet ever again did she give him a kiss, and lingering coaxing smile, but the spirit within still held him down, in a magical sort of style. "O come get up out of that!" she cried, and gave his collar a shake, with a kick in the ribs that bustled him up, and startled him wide awake, and her raiment shrunk to the belted blue of a burly man, said he, "Yet out very late in a dress like that, so track it along with me." "Get up out of that," the constable cried, "and don't make no delay," but the spirit within still held him down, in a magical sort of way. The spirit within still held him down, but the constable bent his back, and hooshed him up and carried him off, at once to the beaten track. The troubadour came into the dock, next day, in a crowded court, and the rig of his garb to the modern herd was a source of evil sport. But the modern beak had no romance, and the sum of a couple of crown He fined the unfortunate troubadour, for the spirit that held him down. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
His Future State by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by recording person. His Future State. I found him sitting on a seat with a sad reflective mien, a drowsing pathos in his eye tinged with attentive green. I sat by him. "Good friend," I said, "of pilgrims the resort. Is this a church? I wish it were," cried he, "it's Bow Street Court." And then again I looked at him. Once more I spoke him kind. Thy far-off gaze doth indicate some presence on thy mind, some haunting thought of grave import connected with thy fate. Perchance that thou mayhap may meet where in the future state. O speak the burden of thy heart that I may note it down. It be's I was a boozing and am fined a quid and crown. My far-off look is for that fine to dodge the prison gate, and warder's lock on 14 days that quads my future state. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Fight in the Phoenix Park by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. A most attractive lady, of middle class degree, when in the Ranelagh Gardens, was thus addressed, as she beheld a man she jilted. "Teresa May Jane, you didn't think to see me back in town so soon again. It's most exasperating, that when my back I turn, you pace the Ranelagh Gardens, with Cotton Ball O'Byrne." The linen draper started, and with indignant shout, Said he, "She loves me only, you ferule fingered lout. Your time you're only wasting, so take a thought and spurn The idle hopes that lure ye," said Mr. Pat O'Byrne. Just then up came a stranger, with bending courtesy, He doffed his triple tilted, "Good night, mademoiselle," said he. Then turning to O'Gorman, and then to Pat O'Byrne, "Ze manners of ze gentlemans, ze both of you should learn, To wrangle round ze lady, I'm shames of you by dam, If ye don't know ze fencing of ze duel, go and cram. Don't bring ze crowds around her, but mit ze morning lark, Vash out in blood ye quarrels all in ze Phoenix Park." "I'm on," said Kit O'Gorman, "Begor, and so am I," Said Pat O'Byrne. The lady then gave a tender sigh, She told them each she loved him, and though her heart did bleed, Expressed a wish he'd combat on a small Arabian steed. The duel's getting prosy, invest it with a fling Of tournamental glory, you'll find it's now the thing To gild with knighty glamour, your daring feat of strife, And he who kills the other, I'll be his wedded wife. "Till then I'm Queen of Beauty," so spake the lady fair, I'll give you both a fortnight, that each may well prepare, And then I'll send you chargers, on which to combat so. Her father dealt in horses. Now, sirs, good night, and go. The fix was fraught with danger, for each of those two men. Existence is too precious, men can't be born again. They ne'er had used a weapon, they never strode a horse, It was extremely awkward, and couldn't well be worse. So while O'Gorman practised with foil and mask, O'Byrne Was in a circus riding, and then he took his turn Before a fencing master, to guard, and thrust, and fool, While Pat O'Gorman cantered around a riding school. At length the fencing master, he says to Pat O'Byrne, "You're perfect mit ze fencing, you've noddings more to learn." The man who taught him riding, did compliment him too, And Kit O'Gorman also had noddings more to do. The fortnight was now over, the morning came at last, The rising dawn was ushered with snow and biting blast. As on the 15 acres, all in the Phoenix Park, The duelists were waiting the Arab steeds, when hark! They heard a distant braying, as 'twere a trump of brass, 'Twas followed by a donkey, and then a second ass Came guided by his halter, unto the fated spot, Said Pat O'Byrne and O'Gorman, "Oh, powders, this is rot!" But yet a queen of beauty, was theirs the prize to win, "We'd better pause no longer, but instantly pitch in," Said Pat O'Byrne and Gorman, they tossed for choice of ass, And pick of blade then wheeling, they faced upon the grass. I was for Kit O'Gorman, a second on that day, To see the flashing rapiers, to hear the donkeys bray, Was sight and sound to think of, the sylvan haunts were rife, With echoes reverberated from crash of deadly strife. Up went each donkey, backwards, while scintillating wails Of flashing steels were echoed, by lashing of their tails, For lo! the fight was doubled, the skittish donkeys sought To variegate the contest, and caper'd round and fought. They gave no chance. The foemen, with awkward clink of steels, Struck now and then, while skeways the donkeys fought with heels. 'Twas 6 o'clock commencing, and now the strokes of 10 Were sounding from the city, and still these mounted men Had not received abrasion, a cut, a prod, or crack, When both were somersaulted from off each ass's back. The weapons went in splinters, as on the frosty grass, Each foeman sprawled a moment, and loudly cursed his ass. The assmen quickly bounded unto their feet again, And watched the seconds chasing the donkeys round the plain, And when at length we caught them, and brought them back once more, With fits of indignation, the baffled foemen swore. "Bad scran to it," said Gorman, "Oh musha, yis bad scran!" Cried Pat O'Byrne, "It's not a fight, for any dacent man, For mortal hours we've struggled, and I'm all in a sweat." Said Gorman, "'Pon me scowl, I got no chance to kill ye yet, The fight has been protracted, and divil a thing is done, I vote we go and tell her," said O'Byrne, "that it's no fun To fight as we've been fighting, Tibbs Eve may come and go, We'd still be found here fooling her donkeys thro' the snow." They felt a queer foreboding of something going down Parkgate Street on that morning, till journeyed back to town. They sought the girl to tell her the fix that they were in, When a larky looking servant in the hall began to grin. "She's not at home at present. but breakfast sure is laid. She's gone off to be married, outspoke the sneering maid. Le Beau, the fencing master, is now the blissful man. You'll see them soon, they're coming in a satin lined sedan. O blur and Owens, said Gorman, O tear o' war, said Byrne, Mac Hugh the other second, and I got quite a turn. The man who heard them quarrel in Ranelagh Walk that night, Was Le Beau, the man who sent them to Phoenix Park to fight. He taught them both in fencing, and yet they did not know That each was being instructed by his rival Monsieur Le Beau. They tied her pair of donkeys unto her garden pier, When from the topmost window that servant shouted, "Here! A note she left to give you, for both of you to learn, 'Twas written Kit O'Gorman, and Mr. Pat O'Byrne. I've sent a couple of donkeys, I thought they might teach What fools you are for fighting for what's beyond your reach, But silly as my donkeys, if both of you remain, Remorse for death will follow, I'm yours, Theresa Jane." We sought a pub and pondered, and drank and sadly swore, We would not be connected by duels evermore. I drank of stout O'Gorman, and Byrne of harder stuff, They swore of duel fooling, they both had quite enough. Now here's the bunch of fives, boys, there's no better rod, To 'venge our wounded honour, than the weapons made by God. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Abdicated Crown by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by recording person. The Abdicated Crown. He was jolly, round, and fat, and with a bright top hat, a chain beneath his burly bosom set. In good old-fashioned way, said he to me, I say, "Oh boy, I have a thing that's to be met. A pressing little debt, the dunner has me set, my pocket is unfurnished, to be let. 5 bob is all I ask, I responded to the task, that abdicated crown is debit yet." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Tears in Law by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. I found him wet with tears. 'Tis woe to see a strong man thus. O Reginald Fitz Alpine Smike, why, wherefore, whence this fuss? O is she dead, thy wife, for that alone can justify A bearded man to sob and spring the sentimental eye? He raised his agonized brows, with tears all steaming hot. "Ah woe!" cried he, "you think my wife Is gone, alas, she's not! This anniversary 7 years, My mother in law pegged out, I'll never pass the day, without A lamenting shout. Her wealth is settled on my wife, And thus for some I bid, With wails of woe I take on so, For every filial tear in law, She stands a shining quid. I left him weeping up the stairs, I met his wife below, "I'll call," said I, "another day, Your husband takes on so." "And so he may take on," she said, "His crocodiles may fall, 'Twill drain some water from his brain, And do him good, that's all. To day in the domestic stocks, He'll find a sudden fall." Alas for poor Fitz Alpine Smike, His confidence was meant For me alone, but she was there, In slippers on the scent. Then came an action for divorce, With all its quips and cranks, And Nissy was the law's decree, That dropped him to the ranks. And then he sought for many cribs. The cribs he did not suit, but he could well disseminate, so he became a mute. His wife took the hymeneal bond, and again, and then she died, and hired mutes with sorry mien were by her coffin side. But when the funeral was o'er, the widower he went, and greeted one of those, the mutes, with feeling compliment. He lightly pinched him by the crape. "O Mr. Mute, I say, I wish I could have wept the tears that you have dropped to day." "Ah, my alack!" the mute exclaimed, "my sorrow was sincere, And were I not the ass I am, we wouldn't both be here, For I am he, Fitz Alpine Smike, thro' tears I let her slip, And now by tears I eke it out, in salary and tip." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Followed the Fox by William Theodore Parks. LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Followed the fox, tally ho! I followed the fox with a go, by Joe, as swift as a swallow or crow. Wo ho! The ditch is a cropper, hello! I am in it, and out and a show. Am asked to the next, won't go. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Honest Young Cashier by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Jim Nienaber. He was a courteous manager, a bosser of the bank. He filled the post of chairman and other seats of rank. But he was never envied, his screw was almost nil. 10,000 pounds per annum, and chances from the till. One day when he was wiping his specs, thought he, I hold. I'm working all for nothing, by a heap of solid gold. I'll make of it a custom, a couple of months or so, to leave the strong room open, as in and out I go. And fitfully in absence of mind, I'll drop my bunch of keys about, and leave them when going down for lunch. The point of which is plainly that on a certain night I'll seize on all the bullion, and fix it out of sight. I will not be suspected, I'll do whate'er I please, for I have clinked the vintage with nobles and M.P.s. And though I know he's honest, I'll make it so appear, that I will prove the robber is the honest young cashier. They'll pass a vote of censure that I did leave behind my keys in strong room open, but pshaw, I need not mind, 'twill come out on the trial, I'll make it sure and clear. 'Twas all of too much trust in the honest young cashier. He left the strong room open, he left his keys about, upon his mantel shelf and desk, anon when he went out. A custom not unnoticed by him, the young cashier, who got a stick of wax, and what he did with it is clear. One night there was a darkness, like crape upon the land, and such a gust and thunder a man could hardly stand. The tempest was so fearsome, that if you spoke in shouts, 'twould only be a tangle of tipsy words and doubts. 'Twas on that gloomy evening the honest young cashier bespoke him to the manager, and, "Sir," he said, "look here, the staff is nearly idle, and so I think you might excuse me now, I'm wanting to do a thing to-night." "Well, you may go and do it." He went, and down he stole into the lonely coal-hole behind a lump of coal, and trussed him like a hedgehog upon the slack, till sure he heard the distant slamming that closed the outer door. Then stole him from the coal-hole, he stole him up the stairs, he ambushed on the landing, for fear of unawares. He stole into the strong room, and stealing out his key, he stole it to the keyhole, and opened cautiously. He looted off that evening as much as he could hold. 'Twas close on 500,000, and all in solid gold. 'Twas on that self same evening the chairman thought 'twas right to work his own manoeuvre, 'twas such a roughish night. 3 overcoats were on him, with pockets every side, 10 carpet bags he carried, and all were deep and wide. He also had a hat box, and, novel thought and bright, he stitched a row of stockings behind him, out of sight. He loaned a sealskin wallet, a whalebone gingham tent, and through the garden gate he skid, and down the town he went. He skirmished through the darkness, he skulked against the wind, he spankled by some people, and left them all behind. He slewed around a corner, and up the lane he slank, and shuffled through the wicket of the courtyard of the bank. He ducked into the back door, and picking up the stair, he sneaked into the strong room, and heavens, what was there? The iron door was open, and all the heap of gold was gone. He sank with horror, and to the floor he rolled. And from beneath the tables and corners of the room 3 coppers scrambled on him like shadows of his doom. They put him on his trial, and heedless of his rank, he got an awful sentence for robbing of the bank. It proves that men are mortal. The sequel I have here. The bankers called a meeting. They called the young cashier. Said they, "You have impressed us with great integrity. We'll give the future management of all the bank to thee." They made a testimonial, and signed it every one. 'Twas cornered with the pictures of specious deeds he'd done. And on the scroll in beauty of art did there appear the tribute of their homage to the honest young cashier. When you prepare for robbing, don't leave your keys about, for fear a wax impression be taken while you're out. And do not come in second, or it might be your doom to chance upon 3 bobbies from the corners of the room. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Road to London by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Pretty maiden, all the way, all the way, all the way. Pretty maiden, why so gay, on the road to London? Will you give that rose to me? That's the flower of love, said she. I'll not give this rose to thee, on the road to London. I have got a love, and he is a good heart, true to me. 'Tis for him, this rose you see, on the road to London. Where is he now, that love? asked he. He's away from me, cried she, but he'll soon return to me, on the road to London. Would you know him, an he be waiting there, by yonder tree? Ay, I would, on land or sea, on the road to London. Then, my sweetest, I am he, give that rose of love to me. I have come to greet with thee, on the road to London. Then he flung his cloak aside, I have come to make a bride of the fairest far and wide, on the road to London. Then she laughed at him and chaffed, unromantic, chaffed and laughed, till he thought that she was daft, on the road to London. No, said she, that's not the way parted lovers meet to day. 'Tis by note or wire, they say, on the road to London. So 'twere best thou didst by flight take thy footsteps out of sight, lest my love, per fortune, might strike the road to London. We've been having shrimps and tea, he's a champion knock out, he could knock spots off you, said she, on the road to London. See my spouse from yonder gap cometh like a thunder clap. Ho! then there's for the first lap, on the road to London. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Antediluvian Pat O'Toole and All His Fleet of Sail by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. While poking my umbrella into the cracks and crannies that served to vary the monotonous setting of the stones of a certain pyramid of Egypt, I scraped away a portion of mortar or cement, and was agreeably surprised by discovering a roll of what I fondly hoped might be a bundle of faded Bank of England notes, but on closer inspection it proved to be a scroll of papyrus, thickly covered with curious hieroglyphics. They throw a misty light on the history of the O'Tooles, for written in a strange mingling of blank verse and ballad metre they purport to give a correct version of the account of the deluge, in which disaster it appears that a worthy ancestor of the said family played a conspicuous and important part. An addenda accounting for their presence in the pyramid is appended, and contains the plausible statement that it was actually a descendant of the said O'Toole who designed and built the tombs of the Pharaohs, and adopted this subtle means of sending his name down to these remote ages. Some savants and Egyptologists will cavil at this startling information, but I happen to be in possession of a three-cornered cipher that runs through the composition of their architecture, which will be of convincing merit, when I have time to issue the 7-folio volumes, which I am not preparing at present, in connection with this important subject. The opening line proves that the ballad must have been composed at a much earlier period than that of the deluge. 'Twas in the rale old ancient times, when there wasn't any probability of truth at all in anything, before the world was dethrone, and the people spoke in Irish with a wonderful facility, before their understanding war be foreign tongues confounded. It was just about this period of the fine old ancient history of mirthful earth that Pat O'Toole, the Irishman, was born. He gave the information, in a noisy intimation, of his presence, rather early on a Whitsun Monday morn. But it is not all out particular, or anything material, to the truth concerning all about the narrative I've spun. The story of his birth, or the mirth, upon this earth, that shook his father's rafters, with rousin' rounds of fun. When Pat at last had come of age, it took 100 years or so, for then the men lived longer, and a minor wasn't free To slip out of the chancery, and from his legal infancy, to come into his property, till the end of a century. Well, it was just about that time a floatin' big menagerie was bein' built by Noah, in the exhibition thrade. He advertised and posted it, got editorial puffs on it, explainin' that 'twould be the best that ever yet was made. He had pasted up on walls, dhrawn out in yella, red, and green, a lion tamer too, was dhrew in puce and royal blue, a hairy bowed gorilla new, he'd got from Mosso do Shalloo, an elephant with trunk, hooroo! The plosaurus, an emu, a wild hoopoo, a cockatoo, and the boxin' kangaroo, he had it hoarded round away, from thim that didn't want to pay, and guarded all be polis, in a private public park. He paid a man that cried "Hooray!" in shouts you'd hear a mile away. "Come in and see the menagerie that's cotch for Noah's Ark. Come look at the wild menagerie before the flood of wet comes down, for thin ye won't have time to see, ye'll all be drownded thin. The glass is goin' down to day, and sure from far Americay, a blizzard on the thrack I hear, so lose no time, come in." 'Twas then O'Toole the Irishman pushed wid his elbows through the crowd, he dropped his tanner and he wint into the show that day, and as he thrapsed along the decks, and in the hold, and up and down, he sudden got a pleasin' thought, and thin he went away. He kept the secret to himself, and never told a single soul, he kept it dark, so there was none to budge, or tell the tale. He went to Father Mooney, and he took the pledge agin the drink, and in the sheds of his back yard he built a fleet of sail. He whistled as he worked, and took a soothin' whiff of honest weed, that wasn't ditherated wild cabbage laves, or such. "I'll prove that Noah's out of it," he sung, and took an airy fit of step dancin'. "I'll make a hit, and lave him on a crutch." He saw that Noah advertised, in notices around about, he'd have to charge the passengers, to save them from the flood. 'Twas such a dirty selfish thrick, that nobody could stand to it, but like a thrue born Irishman, sez Pat, sez he, "I could Collect them all, both great and small, and won't give them a chance at all. I'll spoil his speculation, and I'll save them from the flood." Wid that he wandered round the world, and gathered curiosities, Of every sortins of the male, and of the female kind, And thin embarked them on his fleet, until he had them all complete. He didn't lave a quadruped, or bird, or midge behind, He kept the secret to himself, and never went upon the thrink. And out of every pub, they missed his presence round the town, Until the sky was gettin' dark, and then the hatches of the Ark Were overhauled by Noah, and the wet came pelting down, Then Japheth, Shem, and Ham stood on the threshold of their father's Ark, And shouted to the thousands, that were in the teeming rain, "Shut up your umbrellas, quick, and save yourselves for half a crown. Ye'll never have a chance like this, in all your lives again, For if ye want to save your wives, or if ye'd like to lave your wives, Or maybe wish to save your lives, it's half a crown come in. The world will be all drownded soon, we know it be the rising moon, A wheel of mist is round her boys, come in, save your skin." The charge was rather high, and so they didn't get a soul to go, For thin the royal mint was low, and everyone was poor. "Ah, what's the use of bawling there?" says Noah, from his easy chair, "You're only blathering to the air, come in and hasp the door." Just thin the wathers running high, the people all began to cry, And scramble to the places dry, as fast as they could wale, When all at once they seen a show, for from the distance down below, Came Captain Pat O'Toole, hurroo! and all his fleet of sail. He scattered life belts in the flood, and empty casks, and chunks of wood, And everything he possibly could, with nets, and ropes, and thongs. He dragged them in by hook or crook, a tinker king, a tramp or duke, by fishing line or anchor fluke, and several pairs of tongs. The elephant loaned out his trunk, to male or female, in their funk, of wather without whiskey drunk, and raising thro' the wreck Of cold deluge teemin' round, giraffe and ostrich scoured the ground, And ever drownin' soul they found, they saved them by a neck, For Pat was known, to bird and baste, Of kindly heart, and so a taste Of pleasin' gratitude they placed, For help of Captain Pat. Well, fore and aft, and every tack, The Captain scrambled like a black, With freight of men, his punts to pack, In specs and bright top hat. On larboard or starboard side, Whichever dhoulin' crowds he spied, He dragged them in wid wholesale pride, A quick as jumpin' cat. The blind and lame, the short and tall, the wild and tame, The great and small, wid tubs he came, and saved them all, The skinny, round, and fat, He didn't care, at front or rear, Or head or tail, no matter where, He didn't fail, by skin or hair, Whin once he caught a grip, He hauled them in with frightened howls, Upon the decks as thick as rowls, Till all the world of livin' souls, Were safe in every ship. He saved the king of Snookaroo, He had no trowsers on, it's true, But what is that to me or you, He saved them all the same. There was no bigotry in Pat, and in The bustle of the king, He stuck a boat hook with a spring, And saved him all the same. The Rotian bear he did not shirk, He caught him on a three pronged fork, And wrastling with a furious Turk, He dumped them on the deck. The Chinese emperor he squat around a lamp, siz to Pat, "O Captain, take me out of that." Pat scruffed him be the neck, "O do not save the Jap," he said, He had no pigtail on his head. The bad pernicious chap, but Pat hauled in the Jap. Outside a public house the sign Was loaded with the Muses' mine. They shouted, "Pat ah, throw a line, We've all been on the drink." Siz Pat, "Although I never Brake the pledge myself, here, thry and take Hold of the teeth of this old rake, And rake them in like wink." Three judges of a country court Were by the waters taken short, O throth it must have been the sport, To see their dhreepin' wigs. "Ketch on to this," said Pat O'Toole, And like a soft good natured fool, He flung a lawyer's 'lastic rule, And dragged them in like pigs. We all be innocent in bliss, With ne'er a polis, but for this, The judges shouted, "Do not miss," And dashed their dhreeping wigs. "O save the pleesmen," they cried, "There's 13 on a roof outside," And with some knotted strips of hide, He mopped them in like pigs. "Now ships ahoy!" says Pat, "we may Put out to sea, without delay, And while it's day, we'll start away, Before the rising gale." Then from a bug o' oak three legged stool, He took the sun, with a 2-foot rule, And round the world went Pat O'Toole, And all his feet of sail. 'Twas on St. Swithin's day, the wet began, And rained for 40 days, and 40 nights, It blundered out, the thunder lift and right, Whin like a miracle it stopped, The sun came out, said Pat O'Toole, "Hurroo, there's land ahoy! The tops of Wicklow are in sight." And then he brought his ships around, and dropped a cargo everywhere, in countries where they'd propagate, and where he thought they'd fit. He made a present to the blacks, of lions and tigers, and the serpents and the monkeys, and such awkward perquist. He gave the Esquimaux the bears, and with the Rooshians left a few, and dropped a hungry wolf or two, to make the bargain square. The mustang and the buffalo, the red man of the wilderness, to bow'd Ameriky he gave, and still you find him there. To Hindostan the elephant and hippopotamus he gave, the alligator crocodile, the simple vulture too, the divil for Tasmania, the possum and the parrakeet, he brought out to Australia, with the bounding kangaroo, he left the Isle of Man the last, and gave a 3-legged cat, that passed one day beneath a falling mast, and cut her tail in two. The only thing he missed, in this regard of all the captain done, he didn't save the Irish elk, 'twas drowned by the flood. But still we can't find fault with him, he made it up to Erin, for he didn't lave a reptile there, and did a power of good. But while the captain, Pat O'Toole, was coastin' round, and droppin' men, and elephants and butterflies behind him in his thrack, the ark with Noah, and his wife, and children, struck on Ararat, and spring a leak, and all at once, became a total wrack. Whin Noah got his specs, and saw, by manes of different telegrams, how Pat O'Toole had been at work, his heart within him sunk. Says he unto his family, "Let's one of you sit up for me," then slipped around the corner, and he drank till he got drunk. But Pat O'Toole he always kept the pledge he took before the flood, he lived for 1800 years a blameless sort of life, and whin he died the Hill of Howth was built up for his monument, and Ireland's eye was modelled out in memory of his wife. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Lucky Sixpence by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. You can't exist on nothing, when launched in wedded life, So a lucky battered sixpence, was all I gave my wife, And said to her one morning, when another vessel starts, "I'll scoot and make my fortune, in romantic foreign parts." And so I went and scooted, but how the thing was done, Was not like any picnic, or passage made for fun. We had hardly left the channel, and were in the offing yet, When the steward heard me snoring, in the quiet lazarette. I wasn't quite successful, the voyage after this, And when we got out foreign, I didn't land in bliss. I worked my passage over, but the captain wasn't kind, And all I got for wages, was a compliment behind. And thus I was a failure, my later life was worse, When 20 years were over, at last I found a purse. It made me sad and homesick, and tired of foreign life, "I'll start," says I, "for Europe, and try and find my wife." I sought her when I landed, but everything was changed, And high and low I wandered, and far and near I ranged. I put her full description, in several ads at least, My flag of hope that fluttered, came half way down the mast. I went and I enlisted, all in the blue coat ranks, And took to promenading, along the Liffey banks. I made a measured survey, of curbstones in the squares, and prowled behind the corners, for pouncing unawares. 12 months of measured pacing had gone since I began. I hadn't run a prisoner, the time was all I ran. And when the year had vanished, said the Sergeant Helt O'Brien, "You haven't run a prisoner, you'll have to draw the line." That night I went and drew it, 'twas peeping through a blind. I got some information of suspicious work behind. The act I had my eye on was a woman with some lead. I watched her squeeze a sixpence in wad of toughened bread. A chance of some distinction was here I could not shirk. I peeled my worsted mittens and bravely went to work. I double somersaulted the window, 'twas a do, I picked up in Australia from a foreign kangaroo. I lighted on the table, not quite upon my feet, but ah, her guilty terror was evidence complete. "Wot's this?" said I, impounding the lead, and bread and tin. "I've caught you in the act, ma'am, I'll have to run you in." They put her on a trial, and the evidence began. I swore my information, like a polis and a man. I showed her a silver sixpence, with a hole in it defined, and showed them how I telescoped my presence through the blind. The jury found her guilty, the judge condemned her then, To go into retirement, where she couldn't coin again. Oh sure I wasn't coining, mavourneen Judge asthore, 'Twas the sixpence of my sweetheart, that's on a foreign shore. A lucky one he gave me, he stayed away too long, I wanted for to change it, and thought it wasn't wrong, To take its little photograph, for the sake of being his wife. Said the judge, "It doesn't matter, I've sentenced you for life." I saw her disappearing, from my eye behind the dock, Oh ham a fowl, it's awful, to think upon the shock. I staggered with my baton, to the sergeant and I swore, He had made me run too many, I'd seek a foreign shore. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Wallflower Sonnet by William Theodore Parks, LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. She was charming, full of grace, a hostess you could place In a higher sphere than that in which she shone. I've a partner you should meet, a girl extremely sweet, And for the dance she always put me on, but meetings of regret Were maidens that I met. My hostess was a gay designing one, Her wallflowers were too plain, the waltz did give me pain. I took a B and S and I was gone. She played with me too often, put me on. My hostess was a gay designing one. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Paradoxical Words by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Jim Nienaber. He was up on the hustings and thrashed with his tongue the air in a socialistic vein, and as an employer for the workers he felt, by proxy, a sympathetic pain. A pang that the few could wallow in their wealth, whilst many their brothers should sweat. "But ha!" shouted he, with a chuckle and a grin, "you'll be having a millennium of it yet!" He taught that the masters should share with the men, he scouted with pitiless vim, the right of the master to more than his man, for his man was the master of him. Then they flourished their hats for the precept, with hope that to practice he might be content. But the confidence trick is a hustings resource, and depart wasn't just what he meant. He spoke as a speech is the fashion today, in loud paradoxical words, as a titled premier of the Commons would shout, "Down, down with the House of Lords!" But still 'twas a hopeful and beautiful proof that the cause of the toiler was just, and he wouldn't have to wait very long for a snack from the sugar-ornamented upper crust. In a very little time he'd be gathering his whack from the azure-fired diamond upper dust. You'll be having a millennium of it yet, working men. Put me into Parliament, and then you'll find it a fact we'll pass every act for your chums and your kids, working men. The hours you will work will be 8 working men, on Saturday not quarter so late. And another holiday in the middle of the week we'll give you by the laws of the state, with a capon or a duck on your plate. Oh, put me into Parliament, and wait! You'll be having the land parcelled out into bits, you'll be all of you fixed in the soil, and spontaneity of crops you will reap, without any trouble or toil. The screw will extend for each working man, employers will have to screw back, till tailored by the act in polished top hats, you'll all be as gents in the track. We'll cut away the taxes by the laws that we'll pass, you won't have to pay any rate. You'll be having a millennium of it yet, working men. Oh, put me into Parliament, and wait! And thus with emotional foliated flights he spoke like the clashing of swords, as a titled premier of the Commons would shout, "Down, down with the House of Lords!" He finished his speech in a thunder of cheers, the welkin was knocked into splits, and he smuggled off home by the rear, or his trap they'd have looted for souvenir bits. With the conscience of one who believes he has done what was really the best for himself, he retired into bed that night, and he fell fast asleep, like a saint on a shelf. It might have been a very short period of time, or maybe it might have been long, when he woke with a buzz like a bee in his ear, or the purr of a tomcat's song. It might be the bizz of a wasp, or the hum of a foraging bluebottle fly. But no, 'twas the sound of the whiz of a drill. 'Twas then that he opened his eye. He jumped up in bed and cried with an oath, "What's that you're doing, you scamp?" to a burglar brave who was sampling his room with a bag, jemmy, brace, and a lamp. Then the burglar grinned in an amicable way, for a diplomatic cracker was he, and he wouldn't take offence at the oath of a man who'd only awoke, said he. "I was down at the meeting and heard every word when you gave up the socialist pay, and I'm a bloke what swears by the truth of the beautiful words that you say. That's why I'm here for my slice of the swag that you've pinched by employing your men. I'm totting up the stock in a confidential way for an equal division of it then. For, mate, I'm a pal of the socialist turn what tries to do everything straight. We'll have them between us, the jewels and coin, and make an even deal of the plate." But out from the bed, with a jump in his shirt, the candidate sprang to the floor. Said he, "I may preach, but to practice is bosh," and leaped with a shout to the door. But the cracker of cribs, with a colt in his fist, was first, and with that at the nose of the candidate muttered, "You'll die of the cold if you don't burrow under the clothes." "So don't make a row," said the burglar brave, "but jerk into bed out of sight. I hate to be put upon when I'm at work, and boss, this is my busy night. Now just let me fasten a gag on your mouth. You know that it's wrong to alarm your neighbours at night when they're wanting to sleep. Quick, into this noose with each arm. There, now with that beautiful knot on your pins, you can't say as how you're to blame if I pinch all I can in the regular way of the grabber's contemptible game." He opened the safe, and he smashed the bureau, he looted the drawers and shelf, of the plate and the clocks and the watches and cash from the cabinet quick as an elf, slid everything down to his pal with a rope, and then he slid down it himself. They drove with the swag from the terrace amain in a couple of hired-out traps, and the city was billed on the following day with the special editions in caps. 'Twas a reasonable period from the incident above that a solemn deputation came down for the candidate to speak in a socialistic vein to the voters of the east of London town. "We'll be looking for you there on wagon number 1 near the arch that's of marble in the park. but he pointed to the door. "Oh, tell them that I'm dead, for cram it, I'm not up to the mark." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Cantabile on Music, Art, and Law by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Ho there, pumps and castanets for thee! We would dance a brief measure. Oh, you would wonder why we're here, And wish that we were far. By wig and gown it doth appear We're members of the bar. And though we are, we say to you, We all of us opine, That we may justly claim our due In an artistic line. We are the type of one, you know, As well as we can tell. He is a burly splendid beau, A stately howling swell, A signor of the lyric stage, An operatic don, And by similitude will wage That he and we are one. 'Tis true though he is mostly stout, We're nearly always thin, But if you turn us inside out, We're stouter men within. For he is all a puff and smoke, A sound that dies away, But we are they who crack a joke That lasts for many a day. He has his crotchets, we do harp On clients this and that, He has his sharps and we are sharp, His flats and they are flat. He blows away his notes but we Are shrewder men by far, The notes we get professionally, We stick them to the bar. He quavers, they are nothing to The rallantando thrills That shake our clients when we screw The rosin on their bills. They often simulate as deaf When we do charge a case, Our time is on the treble clef, And theirs is on the bass. We make a loud fortissimo When pleading in the wrong, And often a pianissimo When we should put it strong, But still we pull our fees the same, Though suits may not be won, And by our tongue we conquer fame, Like that conceited Don. And to the jury we do plaint Upon a mauling stick, And from our palates clap the paint Around their craniums thick. We mold them from their purpose dense, Like hoods of plastic wax, And sculpt into their common sense, And then climb down their backs. Our song is done, for we are brief, And we will sing no more, And to my own intense relief, I thought they'd take the door. But no, they did not go, and each Put forth his kidded fist, While we've been trying thus to teach, Our fees we almost missed. Remember this is Christmas Eve, 3 Christmas waits to be, The more the reason you should give Our consultation fee. We have our instruments and they Are of the parchment tough, With which we play while men do pay. We wot we've said enough. And wherefore and whereas for this Aforesaid told to thee, Moreover we must have, we wis, Our consultation fee. 5 guineas unto each of us, Refreshers each a pound, I rose to kick them in the bruss, They bolted through the ground. My future suppers must be free Of nightmare risk the cause Of that cantabile of glee, Of music, art, and laws, Was merely this, that I did run The danger of such rig, By feeding on a goose they hatched Inside a lawyer's wig. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Woman's Tears by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. The tears were in her eye. Said I, "What makes you cry?" And my sympathy was such that I sighed. For it gives my heart the creep to see a woman weep, especially the one to be my bride. Alas, said I, ah me, it grieveth me to see that trickle at your nostril by the side. 'Twas the onions I was cutting, she replied. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Heraldic Fruits by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. When Ch1 the first was run to ground, an ancestral might was found. By rails in pale, at Dexter Chief, from Judge's wig, he pipes his grief. His deeds of later life did tend to prove him of the sinster bend. As boozing charge, he takes his place, from sinster chief to Dexter Base. His son did charge, in sable chief, a sword, or he had come to grief. That chief above, from sinster part, has got, profess, that sword in heart. Another son, of prudent parts, doth pawn his arms for peaceful arts, from Dexter or, on shield of goo, in pale regardant, sinster Jew. Another son, from want appealed to art for charge, on ardent shield, and so upon his coat he drew a garb that he might dare and do. He sought to void a hencoop he is trussed above it, on a tree, couchant in chief, with spade in fess, a sorry right, he must confess. At length an orient pile he took, then counterchanged his coat for luck. This Dexter treatment is not right, he's on the lawless wight. But ah, at last, his fate was healed, and by command, got royal shield, a Dexter King, regardant one, he died and left an only son. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Polly and the Princess Granule by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. The man who confidently seeks to set up a new idea by upsetting an old theory or tradition is one who lives in advance of his time, whereby he forfeits many valued amenities of contemporaneous courtesy, but he is to be extolled for the moral heroism that impels him to advance new facts into the study of history, or explode errors so steadfastly grounded on the popular belief that he finds himself pen to pen with a hostile army of savants, antiquarians, historians, and critics, some stirred with spirit of envy, others with a craving for notoriety, but all unanimous and up in arms with loaded pens and arsenal of inkpots. In this regard I find myself, by placing the correct revision of a popular tradition before my discerning readers. I have to confess that it was not through deep and industrious research that I am thus enabled to challenge the truth of the accepted records. It was through the chance afforded by an hour of breezy seascape recreation that I discovered the mysterious chronicle. The popular tradition is thus related by Dr. Walsh. The celebrated Granule or Grace Alley, noted for her piratical depredations in the reign of Elizabeth, returning on a certain time from England, where she had paid a visit to the Queen, landed at Haworth, and proceeded to the castle. It was the hour of dinner, but the gates were shut. Shocked at an exclusion so repugnant to her notions of Irish hospitality, she immediately proceeded to the shore, where the young lord was at nurse, and seizing the child, she embarked with and sailed to Connaught, where her own castle stood. After a time, however, she restored the child, with the express stipulation that the gate should be thrown open when the family went to dinner, a practice which is observed to this day. When the hill of Howth was covered by a city great and grand, And nuggets were still gathered like cockles on the strand, On the shore around by Sutton a children's maid was met, Who was wheeling of a baby in a sky blue bassinet. And as the maiden cycled that infant by the sea, Down the boreen from the bailey came number 90B. And he sudden lit his eye on, he sudden had her set, That slavery with the baby in the sky blue bassinet. He held aloft his baton, saluted like a man, Said he, I'm almost certain your name is Mary Ann. The surgeon up in Boreen, in the distance there is gone, Will make the distance greater, if you and I move on. For 50 years I've ambushed, and watched around me bait, But never met a sweetheart, that took me so complate. And what's a bait? It's nothing to a police, whin it's gone! I'm gone on yer, me darlin', let you and I move on. Oh, holy smoke, avourneen, I've never seen your like, As sure's my name is Dooley, with the Christian name of Mike, I swear it, by this number on my collar which you see, I'm shockin' fond of you agra, said number 90B. He took that trusty maiden to the adjacent strand, A punt is on the shingles, convayant here to hand. Put the bassinet into it, said the blue official fox, We'll go and look for wrinkles, thro' seaweed on the rock. Now whether or for winkles, or what it was they went, They stayed away much longer than was their first attent, A thoughtless time, that stranded them in a piteous plight, The tide was in, oh Moses! the punt was out of sight. Upon that woful morning, the fact we might not shunt, The little Lord St. Lawrence was kidnapped by a punt, And reverberated wailings of his nurse is echoed still, With oathings of the police around Ben Heder Hill. But then it struck that police, a hopeful thought of Mark, And to the weeping servant, he muttered, "Whist! and hark!" Then put his index finger abaft his coral nose, "Houd on! I'll go and square it, I've got a skam, here goes." The crafty rogue departed, and told the specious tale, Of how the child was stolen by the Princess Granuaile. He told the weeping mother, he almost thought he knew, From information he received, that he had got a clue. When Granuaile was challenged, it struck her she could make A profitable bargain, in re her nephew's sake. 'Twas just before his teething, his nose was but a blob, Like every other baby's, so she could work the job. A tourist came from Connaught, she owned that it befell, That she had left her galley, to find a cheap hotel, But when she reached the castle, with appetite it shocked Her when she found the outer door, at dinner time, was locked. She thought it mean and stingy, the child she lifted then, And told the subtle police, she'd give the child again, In safety to its father, if he would leave the door, At dinner always open, on the latch for evermore. Upon Lord Howth, she fathered her nephew in this way, That he might be ancestor of Viscount Howth to day. And if you want a dinner, I'll give you all a tip. There's just a fleeting moment. I've always let it slip. The minute hand records it upon the castle clock, and if you're up that moment, you'll have no need to knock. Walk in, the door is open, and make a hearty mail, and thank the crafty police, and the Princess Granuelle. And now about the baby, his voyaging began, before he'd had his teething, and still he's not a man. He's yet a child whose ravings across the ocean flew, of who am I, and where am I, and what am I to do? He never grown a whisker, he's never known a beard, of hair upon the cranium he never yet has heard, and so he is not altered, he's still in status quo, as bald and snub and chubby as 300 years ago. 300 years are over, and lo, he's living yet. He made a sleeping cabin from the sky's blue bassinet. He made the punt commodious with wreckage that he found, but of a human sinner he's never heard a sound. He lives without a purpose, an object or intent. 300 years of waiting in ignorance are spent. He lives and for this reason, because he never knew of who he is or where he is or what he is to do. He never saw a sailor, he never hailed a sail. The pensive penguin hearkened unto his only wail. The albatross did follow, he shrieked him for the clue. Oh, who am I, and where am I, and what am I to do? He pleaded to the swallow, and Mother Carey's chicks, of his expatriation, and in his devilish fix, besought the mild octopus, and all the ocean crew. Oh, who am I, and where am I, and what am I to do? He hailed the great sea serpent, the comprehensive whale, the flying fish to answer the burden of his wail, of what the deuce had happened, that life was all so blue. Oh, who am I, and where am I, and what am I to do? He is not dead, it's certain, I merely mention here, he may be in mid ocean, or yet he may be near. The North Wall boat may hail him, it's prophesied that yet He'll be thrown up at Sutton, in the sky blue bassinet. Be watching all the papers, for soon or late some day, in leaded type you'll see it, with a big display Of capitals above it, of claimant who will know Of what to do and do it, and one who'll have to go. Now most of you will question the record I recite. To clear your doubts about it, I think it's only right To tell you I was searching for cockles at Black Rock, When lo, my heart was fluttered with interesting shock. I saw a feeding bottle, that lay upon the strand, I stooped anon and gripped it, with sympathetic hand. I thought it might be jetsam, of baby that was drowned, But lookin' through the bottle a manuscript I found, And there in broken Irish, it states the fact that he Had sealed it in his bottle, and still he's on the sea, With anxious intimation, that yet he seeks the clue Of who he is, and where he is, and what he is to do. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Horror of London Town by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. On London streets, by gin shop door, in the blaze of a noontide sun, with horrible zest of a thirst for gore, was a desperate murder done. On the sainted flags of a Christian town I saw this outrage planned, and 3 little boys in crime sere brown were there with a helping hand. 'Twas a group of 7, I counted them all, a group of 7 strong men, and summing them up with the criminals small, their total I think was 10. With umbrellas and sticks and stones they hunted a sad wretch down, mid random of kicks and ogreous groans, a shame unto London town. But while was fought the unequal fight, that murder of 10 to 1, there came an ominous venger of right, they call him a copper for fun. And I said, he'll be pulling the lot of them then, the villains, ha ha, shall see. There are dungeons dark for the murderous 10, in the walls of the Old Bailey. But no! He paused, and he gravely stood, and then never a stir stirred he, as he saw them compass the deed of blood to its end with a ghastly glee. And oh, 'twas pity to hear the tones of the suppliant's voice in pain, as he sought to fly from the sticks and stones, and the yells of hit him again. A drayman flourished the butt of his whip, I am sure it was loaded with lead, and his laugh was wild as a terrible clip he aimed at the victim's head. Alas, too sure, by the jugular vein he was struck, and he dropped and died. And the drayman shook as he laughed amain, for blood was the caitiff's pride. But oh, I proved, ere I wandered home, there was yet a friend most true, who bore the corse to a silent tomb, ah, yes, and embalmed it too. A kind purveyor came walking by, and he stopped on the edge of the flag, then turned to his boy, and exclaimed with a sigh, "Jim, slip the dead rat in your bag." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Confidential Sonnet by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Met him one night there, northeast of Leicester Square, within about a quarter of a mile. "I've confidence," said he, "in all humanity. I'll leave my bloomin' purse with thee awhile." He left it, went away, then coming back, I say, said he with an insinuating smile, "Now lend your watch to me, for I am like yourself, without no guile." He took it, went away, and from that evil day I keep that man's description on my file. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Tramcar Ghost by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Jim Nienaber. The last car at night is a vehicle laden with the varied symptoms of mysterious hauntings that more or less oppress the fares. Some, toned down by the lassitude of overwork, drop gratefully into their seats and quickly fall into fitful slumber. Others seem to court a spasmodic notoriety by loud and disjointed converse. A weary of world expression clouds the features of a few with an unuttered protest for the disagreeable fact of their birth, whilst others seem by their grumpy glances to suggest a jealous objection to other people's existence. A select few unconsciously advertise a flippant gratification at the possession of life, and squeeze festivity from it as color from a blue rag. But all are haunted with the mysterious workings of unseen spirits that usually accompany the fares in the latest car at night. There wasn't a soul in the tramway car, well, not that myself could see, but the sad conductor took my arm and steadfast gazed on me. Then pointing up to the corner's seat, "Look, that's his regular game. I'm sorry to have to say of a ghost, but he hasn't a tint of shame." You'll think that the tram conductor was drunk. His breath was sweet as mine, like the orris root or a tint of mint, or scent of a similar line. It might be a ginger cordial, but the air of the night was strong, and it wouldn't be proper to say I'm sure. I might perhaps be wrong. "Will you slack?" said I, but he caught my arm. "The man that I killed is there. I hate to have it to say, but no, I can't recover my fare. I asked it from him one winter's night, but full as a tick with drink, the only answer he gave to me was just a chuckle and wink. With this American tink-a-ting I couldn't defraud the co., so caught his collar and chucked him off the back of the tram-car, so." There wasn't a soul that saw the deed, not even the driver knew, and there he lay on the tramway track till the downward car was due. It broke his neck and his shoulder blade, his legs and arms it broke, and laid him out a squirming trout. 'Twas then he awoke and spoke. Said he, "What's up? Is the dancing done? The waltz has made me sore." And wriggling out on the frosty ground, he never spoke no more. Hi-yo, the murder was caused by me. Was never a soul who knew that I am the man who chucked the man that the downward tram car slew. And everybody on earth was done with the murdered man but me. The very next night in the corner seat I looked, and there was he. I thought at first that he might be a twin, and asked his threepenny fare. But he sneered at me. I turned away and left him sneering there. Thinks I, I'll watch him and jot my tot, and when he's going to go, I'll chuck him the same as I did before, for the sake of the tramway co. I calculated the list of fares, then turned around to look. But hey, I'm blowed if he hadn't gone off, gone with his bloomin' hook. But how it was done, or whither he went, I never could guess or think, for the ventilators all were shut, there wasn't an open chink. And I was up at the door so tight he couldn't have passed me by. I never did close an eye that night, no lid of a bloomin' eye. I hates to see the company done, and that was a cheated fare. I'd rather lose my regular meals than wrong the company there. I'd rather work from ante M6 till 3 of the AM clock, than wrong the tramway co. of a coin that wasn't my legal stock. There's nobody sees the ghost but me, because he's a sneaking sprite. He always comes when I take my turn on the latest car at night. That's him, he's there in the corner seat. The man that I killed is there. I hate to have it to say, but no, I can't recover my fare. I've this American tink-a-ting and tickets of sortin's 3. But that embezzling raw will come to cheat and sneer at me. I can't tell why, but he worries me so. I'd collar him if I could. He hasn't a scruff, or any a crop, of the neck, or flesh, or blood. He hasn't a waistband I could grip, nor anythink I could kick. I'd like to fetch him a trip, but to think of it makes me sick. He hasn't a face to black his eye, or even a hat to block. But all the same, in the corner there, he gives the fares a shock. He dosses himself in the favourite seat, and while he's nestlin' there, the passengers can't shove up to the end to make my regular fare. For some insist that the seat is cold, and other complain it's hot, and some it's damp, and some remark it's a most infernal spot, and some keep shovin' their sticks above to let in the atmosphere, while others are closin' them up with a curse. The thing is devilish queer. It's poisonous hard on a man like me, who lives on what he can get, but I'll have to try and see if I can't just manage to shuffle him yet. Ha! There he's gone. I knew he would waltz out of my bloomin' sight. His regular trick with my threepenny fare. Now, jump with the car. Good night. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Margate Sands by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. He was 5 or 6, he 4 years old, when they met on the Margate Sands, and he gravely looked into her great blue eyes, with hold of her little fat hands, and he said, "I love oo well, Rosie. I know dat I'd rather have oo dan all de little girls on de sands today, is even dan de girl in blue. I'm glad oo do, and I love oo too." Through a heaven of golden hair, like silvery bells, was her sweet response, on the ozoned rose lit hair. And then with his bucket and spade he built for his love on the sand that day a castle and pie, till the tide came in and washed his castle away. In many a year thereafter 'twas, in a box in Drury Lane, said a gent as he used his opera glass, "Yon lady's remarkably plain." And the lady exclaimed at the self same time, when she saw his glass in hand, "What an ugly fright!" They did not know they had loved on the Margate sand. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
John McEwen by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Oh, Patty Murphy, Carmen of the stand in College Green, you've had your sudden ups and downs, and busy days you've seen. We're waiting for your story, how the mare struck up the tune of sparks amongst the gravel on the road to Knockmaroon. Oh, faith, and I may tell you, you will not be waiting long, whin the piebald mare a suiker is the sweetheart of me song. For sure it was a masterpiece of how she dragged McCoon behind her whiskin tail along the road to Knockmaroon. 'Twas in the busy period, when the Fenians were at war. I mops around the Dargle on a newly painted car, when creepin' from the ditches, like a bogie in the moon, a man proposed the journey of a drive to Knockmaroon. He might as well have axed me on the minute for a run, to Russia or to Pekin or the Divil or the Sun. He might as well have axed me for a Rocky Mountain jaunt, so I bounced him with an answer of the sudden words, "I can't. The boys to night are rising and I darn go in Payne me car into the danger of a drive to Knockmaroon." Thin spakin' wid the dacency of a remorseful tone, "In fact, I siz I, my car's engaged in Bray by Mick Malone. Besides the mare is nervous, and me wife expects me soon, for the army's out I hear upon the road to Knockmaroon." He didn't stop to parley, but he jumped upon me car, and showed a living picture of the breaking of the war, by pointin' a revolver at me nose. "I'm John McEwen. Drive on," siz he, "I'll guard you on the road to Knockmaroon." I never knew that powder smelt so flimmin' strong before. It smelt as if a whole review was stinking from the bore. The steel of that revolver shone like bayonets in the moon Of all the British army on the road to Knockmaroon, And haunting round its barrel the ghosts of every sin I'd done in all me life before war there in thick and thin. So like a fiddler in a fight I quickly changed me tune. "Bedad," siz I am yer man, we're off to Knockmaroon. "You see I've got a takin' way," says he, and with a grin, He put his barker back into his breeches fob again. "Now whail around and thro' the bog, the feather bed," says he, "I'll guard you by the barracks of the polis at Glencree, And drive as if your car was late to bring the Royal Mail, Whip up as if the divil sat upon your horse's tail. I give the mare a coaxer of the knots upon me whip, A rolling through the darkness where the road begins to dip, I bowled upon me journey with the load of John McEwen, And fits of wonder why he drove that night to Knockmaroon. And just as we were wheeling out beyond the feather bed, The boys put up their lamplight and a lightin' down he said, Some hurried words and whispering then with cheer for him, Presenting arms, "Drive on!" they cried, "God speed you, Wicklow Jim!" I drove as if the Pooka was the horse beneath me whip, We flew as if the jauntin' car was on a racing thrip, We scattered dust and whizzed of wheels a sparks upon the air, When all at once I pulled her up, at shout of "Who comes there?" It was a throp of soldiers, and me heart began to croon, Wid jigs against my overcoat, says he, "I'm John McKune!" He sprang from all the cushion, and little while was gone, Then comin' back a captain give the password to drive on. He leaped upon the car again, and says to me once more, "Now drive me 'cross the Grand Canal, and on to Inchicore." But when we got around a turn, and in a lonely place, He whipped his weapon out again to point it at me face. Says he, "Your car is weighty, and yourself's a dacent bulk, You say the mare is nervous, and she might begin to sulk, We mustn't let that meddle with the work that I've in hand, So skip your perch this minute, like a lark at my command, Come hop your twig, unyoke her in a slippy lightning crack, Just double up that rug, and strap it tight across her back, And shorten up the reins, and swoop your overcoat and hat, Quick flutter up as if you wore a blackbird from a cat." I never felt so brave, in all me life me courage rose, To bid him go to blankers, but the barrel at me nose, Brought down me heart like wallop, till I felt in me brogue, And so I done his dirty work, the ugly thieving rogue. I loosened the crather from the shafts and strapped the rug, and then He vaulted on her back and faced her up the road again, "You'll find her in the mornin' on the grass in Phoenix Park," He shouted as with scalping whip he galloped through the dark, And left me cursin' in a fit, beside me stranded yoke, As if I'd got the headache of magpoletic stroke. Next night, when I was frettin' that I'd never see her more, I heard the mare a suiker's hoof beside the stable door. I darted out, she kissed me with a whinny loud and long, That made her ever after as the sweetheart of me song. When 15 years were over, and meself was down in Cork, I read it on a paper in the Bowery of New York, Of a pub around a corner, where a lonely man in June Was sitting when two men came in, says they, "You're John McKune." He dropped his glass of cocktail with a crash upon the floor, And looked as if he'd jump the sash of window or the door, He looked as if he'd rather be in hell or on the moon. Said they, "At least we have you for a traitor, John McKune." He didn't spake an answer, but he quickly thried to grip The bright revolver weapon from the fob behind his hip. He hadn't time to draw it, like a flash lightnin' dart, Two loaded level weapons war against his jumpin' heart. "Hands up!" they shouted, "damn you, ye scamming divil's limb, We've come to scotch the serpent we know as Wicklow Jim." Said they, "At last we have you for oaths you gave to men, And swore them for your purpose to betray and sell them then." He didn't make an answer, but he thried to whip a knife From collar of his cotta, it was there to guard his life. He hadn't time to draw it for a crack of shots and soon a pool of blood was spurting from the corpse of John McCune. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. I'll Go for a Soldier by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. "Oh, where is my Johnny Acushla?" said she. "He left me last night, and, Maggie," says he, "it's myself and yourself, ma'am, that couldn't agree. Be danged but I'll go for a sojer." He took all the cash that I had in the till, I followed him round to the butt of the hill, "Go back or yourself is the first that I'll kill," says he, "when I'm gone for a sojer." I hung to his neck, and I asked him to stay, "Ye might as well ask for the night to be day," But wringing his neck from me, shouting "Hooray!" Says he, "Whoa, I'll go for a sojer." I set the dog after him, thought that he'd stick In the tail of his coat, he was up to the thrick, For he turned on his heel, and he skelped him a lick Of the stick, "I'm off for a sojer." "Oh, whisht! ah, there, look, he's comin'," she cried, As far in the distance, her Jack she espied, With Corporal Quirk on the march by his side, He's coming back home with a sojer. When Johnny came near enough to her, he to spake, "O Johnny Avourneen," said she, "did ye take The shillin'?" "No faith, for I'm too wide awake, I only wint off for a sojer." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Ode Here by William Theodore Parks. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. I dyed away the gray from my sparsy head of hair, I buttered up the fur upon my tile, I darned the ventilators in my garments here and there, And with my go to meeting stick and smile I went to see a widow I had courted long ago. She had just been to the probate for a pile. Said she, "You are a person that I really do not know." Her tone was rather cutting, like a file, A serious alteration in her style. I knew her when a maiden without guile, She wouldn't even loan me from her pile A widow's mite. It agitates my bile. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.